Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We are continuing our Tuesday morning with John and Gabor and focusing on a beautiful sweet Szamorodni and an amazing 6 Puttonyos Aszú from 2014 from the Saint Benedek Winery of Tokaj.
Yeah, it's definitely not the healthiest breakfast, a little bit high in the sugar, but complaints are zero in this
Breakfast of champions.
Breakfast of champions.
Whew. Look at the color of these wines. Amazing golden color. Tokaj has been producing sweet wines for at least a half a millennia. We don't exactly know who and how it started, but the color reminded me of a story. In the medieval times, alchemists came to Tokaj because they were sort of dragged there by the color of this wine. They thought that this golden color can be actually turned into gold. I don't think they succeeded. I think you can turn it into gold if you can sell it, but the color is one of a kind. It just grabs your attention and eyes.
A little bit about the vintage itself. 2014, in terms of recent decades, was one of the toughest vintages of all time, and this made for very, very difficult timing of the harvest because we had a lot of ripening happening at the same time, but inconsistent ripening. So it was, you had to jump around to a lot of different areas to pick what was ready at the time. And this is, of course, a lot of energy and a lot of logistics for the winemaker to work out. And even though the yield was not extremely high for the vintage, we still got some very, very good quality wines out of it.
Yeah, and let's talk about the name a little bit. The Tokaj terminology is very complex and sort of going back to ancient times. There are two styles here, the two main styles of the sweet wine of Tokaj. The first one is Szamorodni. Szamorodni is a Polish word which goes back to probably the 1700s when the main market for Tokaj was Poland, and Poland was much larger at the time. Szamorodni in Old Polish means as it comes or as it's born. And in Tokaj vinification and harvest terms, that means that they cut the whole bunches. Some of the bunches or some of the berries on this bunch will be shriveled, botrytized. Others will be healthy. The acidity and the juice is provided by the healthy berries, while the shriveled raisin-like berries will provide the beautiful color, will provide a lot of flavor, natural sugar, of course, and complexity to the sweet wine.
What I love about it is that typically the sugar is noticeably less than what you find in Aszú, and so it's a little bit more palatable to people who have a lower tolerance for high sugar, but it still gives you, it delivers, the terroir, the quality, kind of the essence of the region.
Szamorodni, in my experience, a good Szamorodni can be as good as a good Aszú.
Yeah, it all depends on the winemaker. It all depends on, well, a lot of factors. Also, to backtrack a little bit about the harvest and how this works, the whole concept of noble rot, in case somebody's not familiar with it. So basically, there's this strain of fungus that is very prevalent in the Tokaj region, which we call botrytis. And botrytis kind of lets you go down two paths. The bad way, which results in gray rot, a destructive fungus that kills off your yield and kills off your grapes. Or, in our case, we're located in one of the very few places in the world where noble rot, the good alternative, can take place. And so what this is going to do is it's a fungus that goes onto the grapes, and then slowly it starts attacking by poking holes in the skin of the grapes. And then as that afternoon sun comes out to warm up all the vines and warm up all the bunches, of course, the water evaporates out from the pulp of the grape, and you're left with tons of sugar and acid and flavor. All the things that we need for winemaking without the dilution of the water.
Yeah, what's that?
So, what's going on here? Let's give it a taste.
I get a lot of caramel and pruned apricot jam on the nose.
For me, it's also a lot of this it's like candied orange peel, or if you've ever been to a cocktail bar and you have these dehydrated orange or blood orange slices, which are apparently edible. I didn't know that. Even though the skin is on them, you can still just crunch through them like candy. It reminds me exactly of that. So next time you have a nice gin and tonic with these dehydrated orange peels in there.
Candied orange peel, that really nails it. when you take your first sip, what is surprising is the acidity. Very refreshing. Many people are afraid of sweet wine because it can be cloying and flabby. Well, that's not Tokaj.
Never.
Tokaj is a very cool wine region, and that brings good acidity, and also Furmint is a grape variety with high acidity, and that's why it's so perfect for dessert wines.
So this Szamorodni has just over 120 grams per liter, which is actually qualifies in terms of sugar content to be the equivalent of a 5 Puttonyos Aszú. So in terms of sugar, we're not lacking anything, but again, a nice acid and all that structure puts everything in place so that we're not having that cloying, too sweet sensation in the wine.
When would you serve this wine?
When would I serve that? Well, we have two options. Number one, if the appetizer is going to be foie gras, so like on a nice piece of freshly toasted bread, some foie gras, we can break the rule and we put the dessert wine at the beginning. And then of course, at the end of the meal, as a dessert wine, especially once we push more than 120 grams per liter, that's not going to leave too much to be desired in terms of sweetness at the end of the meal.
This is dessert. Don't worry about making dessert. Save yourself the trouble of baking a beautiful cake, because dessert is ready. It was made in 2014 and it's called Édes, sweet Szamorodni of Szent Benedek.
Bingo. And so when we talk about Aszú, it all comes back to the harvest. So there's this noble rot taking place on all of the grapes, on all of the vines throughout the vineyard. And so the harvest team has to go to each individual bunch and pick the fuzzy little raisins one by one. And if there are some grapes that are going to be ready in 2 or 3 days, you come back then. But on the day, you only pick what's totally ready, what's fully cooked on the vine. After this harvest is done, so you have all of your shriveled berries in one vessel, you have to pour a base wine on top of it. So this is going to be still fermenting wine from the same vintage. And so once again, for the case of this one, it was 100% Furmint for the base wine that goes on top, and then 50-50 for the raisins, Furmint and Húslevelű. After that, approximately 2-day maceration or 2-day soaking is done, then you can press it, and then that wine goes off for fermentation.
If you look at the color, there's a stark difference. This is so much darker, much more amber color. This is more on the citrusy side. This is more amber caramel color, and that indicates to me a lot more shriveled berries, a lot more botrytis, a lot more sweetness, and if it's made well, then this will pair with high acidity, a nice creamy body, and like a lot of complexity.
And so for the labeling, when you see this term 6 Puttonyos, that's going to require that you have a minimum of 150 grams per liter of sugar, but it can be more. In the case of this one, it's about 185, well 184 exactly.
On the nose,
creme brulee.
Creme brulee.
For me, it's exactly
Beautiful.
creme brulee, or
yes,
Rákóczi Túros, also creamy.
Two of my favorite desserts.
Apricot, dried fruits.
With some of the old Aszús, I get this herbaceous side. Dill, lemongrass, ginger, spices, Christmas spices, yeah.
So when we talk about being patient with the winemaking and with aging the wines, this is the result.
Oh my God! A good Aszú sort of sucks you in. It grabs you and twirls you around.
And it's not the alcohol that's going to give you; it's the sugar.
Usually, the Tokaj sweet wines have a low alcohol.
Yeah.
In this case, 10.5 and 11% alcohol. There's natural sugar in it, and fermentation stops because the sugar is so high that the yeast can't function anymore.
Bingo.
Cheers to the grand sweet wines of Tokaj. These are available here in Brody Sándor Street in the heart of Budapest.
And of course, on both of our web shops, so tastehungry.eu for those of you who are based in the EU, and then tastehungry.us for our friends in the United States.
Cheers to us all.
Cheers. Enjoy.